Welcome to everyone for is this our third webinar now? Yes, I think it is. We've had the introduction webinar in September. We had Claire Matisova, who I see is also on the call, which is lovely. And those of you who are part of the distribution list for the UK PACT national distribution list, you should also have now received Claire's slides from last time. Apologies that was not recorded as a session. We had a bit of a technical issue with the recording access at my end. So that is now resolved. We're recording this session today, which is great because this time round we're talking about carers at work. I do have an update in terms of our speaker. So Kalichi Dibi, who works at Newcastle University, has had an appointment this morning, like a medical appointment. Nothing serious, but it's affected her ability to attend today. She may be able to join us later in the session, but it's something that you can't join us at the start. Thankfully, we also have the pleasure of welcoming Katherine Wilson from Carers UK. So Katherine will be able to speak to us about the kind of support and the employers for carers aspect of carers experiences at work. So we've got that base covered in a really great way. So I'm really grateful that Katherine can join us today. That's worked out well. And so if Kalichi is unable to join us, we will instead reschedule Kalichi's session and to have that later in the year. What we'll do today, I will briefly speak just about what's developing with the UK PACT general organisation. We'll have a question later, which feeds on the theme of carers at work as well. I see my co-chair Anna Lopez has joined us now, which is lovely as well. We will now, so we'll have that, and then we'll move straight into Katherine's discussion and talk about what Carers UK is and what it offers as well. So with no further ado, I will move on to the next slide if I can. Okay, so I really wanted to briefly flag to you all, for those of you who weren't in the last session, we are in development with a website. You can navigate to that. It is ukpact.org. There are some resources that you can access through just the holding page. We have links. There is a toolkit, which is the in development toolkit based on what members have already contributed to. And as well as that, there is a YouTube channel with some previous sessions included there where you can discover some of the content that's previously been led by Medea Sajid as well. And we have a LinkedIn group, which again is fairly new, but if you would like to join that and then start to have discussions in that forum, that's a place to do that. I wanted to flag that since our last webinar, I've been thinking more and more about how we might use the website as a location for some benchmarking, and that kind of builds on what Claire shared with us last time about parental leave and then the freedom of information request that she did. We've had some initial discussions about that, and Anna and I have also spoken with the web developers about how we might house that in the website. So what I've been thinking would be a really useful resource and something that we could use to kind of benchmark different institutions would be thinking about, we could have column for maternity leave, column for paternity leave, and you may have or may not be familiar with what is a really excellent resource by the organisation called DadShift, and they have done this exercise for companies across the UK. If you're interested in that, we can share that information afterwards. But we were thinking for higher education, we could have this type of benchmarking of all the institutions, what they offer as maternity, what they offer as paternity, shared parental leave, but then other resources such as, do they have a breastfeeding or a parenting room, and also, and those of you who are in the distribution list will have seen some kind of pregnancy loss leave is what kind of provision is offered at your institution, and that is an idea that we're thinking about as a potential extra section of the website. And it may be that it has to be a link to a spreadsheet on like a Google Sheets. With the technical side of that, we're trying to work out. But the idea is that it would be a resource that we could all look at and use to kind of make arguments within our institution. So that's something that we're planning and thinking about. Just to emphasize, if you would like to have access to the toolkit, which is like a shared document, to make any edits or to add any content, please just use that request button on the Google Doc, and we'll happily give you access to that. So at the moment, it's a view option, but you can request edit access. So I'll move on from there, but just wanted to highlight those kind of ongoing developments with the website. I will now hand over to Katherine, who is the Head of Employment and Specialist Delivery at Carers UK, and really delighted to have Katherine here. Catherine's had some technical issues with her camera, so we'll be able to hear her voice, but sadly not be able to see her. But it's great to have you here, Katherine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark, for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be joining you, and I'm sorry that you can't see me, but hopefully you can actually hear me okay. Now, I have just got a few, great. I have got just a few illustrative slides, so would it be helpful if I shared those? Oh, you've got them already.
I've added them into the deck, so just let me know when you want to move on.
That would be fantastic. So just wanted to say a little bit, firstly, about Carers UK, who we are. So I'm hoping that everyone on the call has heard of us, but just in case you haven't, to make the point that we're a national charity who's here to make life better for carers. And by carers, we mean any one of us who may be looking after an older, disabled, or sort of seriously ill family member or friend. So it could be a child with a disability, long-term health condition, or it could be supporting elderly parents or a sibling or partner. And we're really here to give expert advice, information and support for carers. That's free advice. And we connect carers so no one feels they have to care alone. And we campaign together for lasting change for carers and to put carers on the map. And then lastly, we innovate to find new ways to reach and support carers. And one of the key ways that we do that is connecting with organisations who are employers in all different sectors, including in education, to try to reach carers, because many of us become carers when we're of working age. So that's why our employers can play such a key role in helping and signposting to support. So next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty here. Thank you very much. So just a little bit about our business forum, Employers for Carers. This basically was set up by Carers UK with a pioneering group of businesses many years ago who realised that this was an issue that no one was talking about. It was completely invisible in the workplace. So this interest group of employers started up with Carers UK to look at ways of supporting employers to develop carer-friendly workplaces, and to promote the bottom line benefits of supporting carers, because these businesses in the early days, in private and public sectors, realised that it wasn't just enough to say this is the right thing to do, that businesses had to actually appreciate that it made business sense too, in terms of supporting and retaining key talent and skills. And the work of Employers for Carers over the years has really influenced employment policy and practice. So the most recent example of this is the new statutory right to carers leave, which came into force in April this year, and which really arose following a private member's bill, but actually arose because there was increasing awareness, including among businesses, that people were taking up all their annual leave to care, becoming ill and not being supported, and often leaving work to care, that something like carers leave could make a real difference. So it was evidence provided by many of the employers in our network, which really helped to make that case over the years. So next slide, please, just to show you in a sort of snapshot really of what the benefits are of Employers for Carers. And I won't go through this in detail, it's just so you have it for reference. But I think it reflects some of the practical things that employers really find helpful. So following the early work of this interest group, we set up Employers for Carers and we launched as a membership forum in 2009. So we've been going for 15 years now. And what employers found they wanted to share was sort of expert resources, tips, so things like case studies, frequently asked questions, toolkits, and e-learning, things that people could dip into. And our resources have all been developed with and by employers. So they're very, very practical. They're based on things that have been challenges, but how people have overcome them and what works. Things like tailored workplace sessions, so joining sort of sessions like this, sharing insights, both the insights from Carers UK, but with members with each other, helping to sort of provide promotional materials and support. So I know the theme of today, we're talking really about national campaigns as well as about how we create awareness. So one of the ways that we do that is through two of our major campaigns at Carers UK. We have an annual Carers Week campaign, which is the second week of June, and then an annual Carers Rights Day campaign, which is coming up soon at the end of November, 21st of November this year, just to raise awareness about carers' rights across the UK. And so these can be really good hooks to raise awareness in the workplace. And a programme of different sort of member events and webinars. People often learn best from each other, don't they, really? It's not just Carers UK saying something, it's employers sharing this together. Also things like doing a practical audit of workplace policy and practice, where you are at the moment as an employer, how that compares with others in your sectors, and really useful tips to help you develop and maintain good practice. And that leads me on finally to our employer benchmark. So as part of the membership, we give a 75% discount. It's a huge discount, really, for our Carer Confident benchmarking scheme, which is now going from strength to strength. So we launched that on our 10th anniversary. That was 5 years ago. And it's a very practical framework to help employers, as I say, develop and maintain good practice and hopefully retain carers in their workplace. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. So just the next slide, please. It's just a visual slide, the next one, to give a screenshot of our digital resources. So one of the membership benefits I mentioned is access to resources. So members have this as a sort of dedicated platform. So on this platform, you have a section with resources for managers. You can just literally dip into things like e-learning toolkits, and similarly a resource for carers. And this provides really helpful curated information, if you like, for carers. So it's in easy to see sections like health and well-being, financial planning, practical support for caring, technology and caring, including access to our a free app to help you manage your care with a caring circle. So very, very practical support and advice that people can dip into. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to sort of bring to life a few of the issues that have really helped, I think, with employers, that they said that really helps in their workplace. So our good practice section, we have some P's here: policy and preparation, practice, peer support and promotion. And so these are things that really work in it, that actually work in the workplace, whatever size organisation you are. So with preparation, we're talking about things like preparing the ground by making caring visible, including a question about caring in a wider workforce survey. When you're talking about parents and support, also thinking about those that might have a disabled child or those that might have wider caring responsibilities, maybe balancing that with caring for an adult as well, and just raising visibility. And then policies, the second P there, are making your policies more visible for carers. So flexible working and leave policies, making support for carers transparent, because we know very often that there's great policies in organisations, but people don't necessarily access them. They don't know that they're relevant to them, and managers don't often signpost carers to them. And then practice, so that's all the practical support, like the nitty-gritty health and well-being, practical adjustments that can make a real difference for carers, and putting things into practice. The next one is peer support, so connecting carers like through peer support networks. They can be online groups, employee resource groups, or in a small organisation, it might be a champion or a go-to person, but just so that there's someone else that carers feel they can talk to about their own experience. I know that myself as someone who has combined work and caring, how important it is often to talk to someone who's been through that experience themselves. And then finally, promotion. So as I mentioned earlier, using things like awareness raising events like Carers Rights Day, Carers Week, or indeed other big events in the calendar. It might be inclusion events, might be work-life balance events, or things like health and well-being days, or focuses things like Mental Health Awareness Week. But just being aware that these issues can be really important for carers, that many carers will really benefit from this sort of access to help with this. So I think it's around making sure that the policies and support there are actually regularly promoted. and also using specific hooks to promote them around specific campaigns. And then lastly, we've got a really good nitty-gritty section about, where organisations have shared how they've been capturing data about carers. Because I think the challenge about caring is that it's not an easily identifiable thing. It's a bit different from being a parent, because very often it can be something that creeps up on you gradually, like an elderly parent gradually needs more support, and you realise that you're sort of looking after them more and more, maybe at a distance, but it's still impacting on your ability to work and do everything else in your life without getting some support. But also caring can happen suddenly. Your partner can have an accident, or something can happen where, perhaps your father or mother has a stroke or heart attack, and suddenly you're a carer. So I think the identity is a real challenge there. And we know from research and surveys we've done at Carers UK that it takes on average 2 years to identify yourself as a carer. And many people have been caring for even longer than that before they realise that there was workplace support there for them. So I think, particularly around the new Carers Leave Act now, it's really focusing employers' minds about how do we reach out to carers, how do we enable people to come forward and recognise their carers and access support. So that's a really sort of practical section of tips and advice there. So next slide, please. Just wanted to really finish with our contact details, just to say that if you want to hear anything more or see anything more about Employers for Carers, our website is here, and our contact email, which means that all of our team can pick it up, is at the top there. Our general Carers UK website I've also put on here as well, with an information email. So if you've got questions about our campaigns or policies or anything like that, please contact us. And we also have a telephone helpline. So that's available for anyone or any of your colleagues who may want to speak to someone about their own caring situation. And that's available Monday to Friday, 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And there's also an advice email address to contact about a specific sort of personal query. So I just wanted to make that available and ask you to please do spread the word. And I think I'm just going to pause there, because I'd be very happy to contribute to discussion or give any more information if that may be helpful about the sort of support that we provide at Carers UK. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Katherine. That's brilliant. For those of you who have joined during that, so Katherine comes to us from Carers UK, and we particularly invited Katherine in relation to the work that Kelechi Dibby and has been doing with colleagues at Newcastle University as well. And so we know that some institutions have a good relationship with Carers UK, and also particularly the Employers for Carers carer confidence status and the resources that you can access. So I thought it would be useful for everyone to have that kind of updated, this is what it is and this is what you can benefit from. I think Anna is on the call. Anna, are you
Hello, can you hear me, Mark?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great.
I'm mainly saying that because you probably won't be aware. Unfortunately, Kelechi, I don't think can join us today. But I wondered if Anna, you could very briefly just speak to what is happening or has happened at Newcastle for carers, because I think there is like a dedicated leave, and there are other things that have happened at Newcastle University that benefit carers.
Yes. Sorry, I can't get my camera to work, I'm afraid.
So you're not the only one today.
Yes, I don't know what's happening, but maybe some kind of sabotage of things is going on. But yeah, so it's a pity that Kelechi is not here, because I think she was really pivotal and really important in setting what we have at the moment at Newcastle. And I've arrived much later when the important things were already all set up. So I know that we have Employers for Carers, and we have access to all the great resources that Katherine has been talking about. And I would be interested to know how, if this is the case for other universities in the call today, and if you've heard about this before, and also to know what needs to be done in order to make these resources available in other universities. But what we have as well at Newcastle is the carer's passport.
The lectures here.
So we have a template document that we use with our line managers, and we have a conversation which is supposed to be a friendly, collegial conversation with our line managers about our caring responsibilities and our situations. And that is a living document that should be updated regularly. And therefore, when our line managers leave or there's a change in line managers, we don't start from scratch. There's already a document there, and there are already things in place, whether it is flexibility or arrangements and agreements between employees and line managers. So as I said, we don't start from scratch, which I think is a great thing. And we can choose whether we want to maintain that document as just something between ourselves, the employees, and our line managers, whoever they are. And as I say, they may change and the document continues. Or if we want that to be sent to HR and it becomes even more formalized, if you want. Yes, and we have, I think, a very generous policy in terms of caring leave and leave related to our caring responsibilities as compared to other universities. I mean, I think we do need the benchmarking that you were talking about, Mark, because we don't know exactly, but I think we have good provision at Newcastle, thanks to the efforts of people like Kalichi and the involvement of Carers UK as well.
Absolutely. I think I was literally thinking that as Katherine was speaking about benchmarking, that would be another, if we can identify what would be the categories that would be most important for carers, to include that in a benchmarking spreadsheet as well. That would be useful for us to have those categories specifically geared towards being more carer inclusive. I think that would be a really useful thing to have. I think what we were going to do firstly, actually, before we move on, does anyone have questions that they would like to raise at this point, in particular for Katherine, or are there any comments that you'd like to make at this stage, either in the chat or to raise your hand about your experiences of supporting carers, of having a carers network, and anything that comes to mind at this point? I'll leave that pause just in case it's... Yes, Viv.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I'll just share very briefly. So I work at Kingston University, and recently we've had representatives starting up a parent and carers support group as part of our EDI aims. Before that, haven't really seen anything in our workplace specifically aimed at carers. This information is really useful. I could have done with a lot of this about a year and a half ago. I found my way to it through a sea of signposting, but hadn't really come across Carers UK directly, only Dementia Carers Count specifically, and some other charities. So yeah, this is really useful, and this has sort of come to my knowledge through the group and the two reps that are sort of running the group. But it seems to be run by the reps rather than sort of HR staff specifically. So yeah, that's where we're at in Kingston.
Thank you, Viv. That's really, really helpful. From my own perspective at Northumbria, we had a parents and carers network, but we have now moved towards, and we're in process of having a separate carers network with that kind of separate dedicated focus, particularly because I think similar reasons to what you've described, probably not adequately being able to support that experience, that lived experience, and now we've got someone in our, it's called Karen Corder in our institution, who's taking that forward, which is brilliant. So I think the reason why we've put events on like this today is to offer that kind of signposting to useful resources for people in those positions, because as I've said before, I think in particular carers are uniquely time poor when it comes to what do I need to support us, and as Katherine mentioned, just even what is a carer, and I know Kelechi has that checklist is particularly useful for that. So thank you. Oh, Fiona, please.
Yeah, so I'm from Aston University in Birmingham, and we have a parents network of different age groups, but we also have the carers network, but it's not, as you say, it's very time poor, so it's difficult for people to actually attend the sessions. So it's finding imaginative ways to get people involved that it's not going to take, because if you've got an hour, you're going to use it to do something else. You're going to use it to go to do the caring or catch up on the stuff that you can't do whilst you're doing the caring. I'm not a carer, but I appreciate it. My dad's a carer for my mum, and I think it's such a key. If you could see it on a recruitment, on the benefits of what universities actually offer, I think it's a big draw. I'm predominantly from private sector before coming to HE 2 years ago, and we didn't have anything like this in all the public sector, private sector companies I've worked in. What? This is just wouldn't happen. It would be seen as a bit of a waste of time, if I'm totally honest. But they don't see the bigger picture of it. They don't see the bigger picture of if you reckon that depending on how many people you've got in your company, you've got all those people that could potentially be carers. You don't know. You need to get under the skin. You need to talk to them, do one-to-ones, etc., etc. And I just see it as a very, very useful tool, and more emphasis needs to go onto it as well. But the Carers UK, I've just literally WhatsApped it to my dad and said this might be useful for you and other people that you know that are carers, and my brother, and it's just spreading the word, isn't it? And making sure that we've all got the tools to do the jobs, whatever those jobs might be. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, it's one of the motivations behind this UK PACT national organisation, is to try and offer that to institutions so that that time poor problem can be at least supported in some way. So that's why we're here. So no, great to hear that. Well done for sharing it as well. That's brilliant. Claire Crowther.
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
I'm in an office, that's weird. Thanks so much for putting this on, and thank you, Katherine, for standing in. I was really interested in the fact you said it takes on average a couple of years for people to identify themselves as a carer, because I know that was my experience. Turns out I'm a carer for quite a few people, but I thought I was just a mother of a disabled daughter who was adult. My partner got cancer, so I just thought I was a partner, helping with his treatment. And turns out my father was very elderly, mum was disabled, and I just thought that's what you do. I didn't realise it was a caring thing. I'm at King's College London, and we've got a fabulous group called Nest, which is a network for engaging, supporting and bringing together parents and carers. We're more and more seeing how the meetings, we have sort of drop-in meetings for people like you'd said earlier about not having the time. You sort of think, oh, I meant to, but I don't know if I can spare that time if I've got a deadline. But what I've noticed is sometimes people just drop in because they just want to vent, or they just want to go, oh, I've got all this on. And it's quite nice just to have identification rather than solutions, just to actually have identification that you're not totally alone with it, because it's a really lonely place to be. I know from my own experience, the middle of the night can be an incredibly lonely place to be when you dare to let thoughts come in about worst case scenarios and things. So I love this benchmarking idea, because we'd actually done some work on spreadsheets to see what other universities were doing, Russell Group universities, that sort of thing, in terms of paid carers leave, because often they put on the website that they've got it, but it turns out it's really if your childminder doesn't turn up or something. But if you've got somebody that you're actually actively having to physically help, it's unpaid, which is quite interesting. But that benchmarking thing would be fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. I think that would be the kind of the gold standard. And from my understanding, Anna, am I correct in thinking that that is offered at Newcastle, like paid carers leave? I think that was.
Yes, yes. I can't remember exactly how many days, but it's 2 or 3 days, I believe.
Yeah. And I think, I think from my memory, that was negotiated so you could take an hour here, an hour there, so not like a full day, but you could break that time up into time slots so that you could, attend an appointment or that kind of activity that carers have to do. And so that was how that was used in the most efficient way to benefit a carer. So yeah, I think we've had some discussion in the chat about definitions, and I think I've mentioned already that Kelechi developed a really useful checklist. It has the dual purpose of raising awareness and also helping individuals to self-identify. And I think from all the conversations I've had, and I kind of echo what Claire has, and I think Fiona said about, my awareness of carers is not as great. I don't have the lived experience, but I've spoken to quite a few carers now, and I've got that sense that that's the starting point, is to raise awareness, to identify who are carers in your institution, and then to build from there. Benjamin, please.
Hi there. Yeah, it's slightly tangential perhaps, but it seems like a great space to ask this question, bearing in mind there's so many different HCIs represented. I'm Claire myself. I am in the outreach team at Essex, and we know that one of the prime underrepresented groups is young carers, for example.
Yes.
And I just feel like I'm very new to this network, so apologies if this is old ground treaded, but I'd be very curious to hear from anybody, any of the institutions, about whether you do have the kind of synergies between your groups here and efforts you're doing to engage with these young people, without like looking to add extra load to what's already a very busy carer's life. I wonder about whether there is some sort of mutually beneficial ground to explore about, looking at you within your networks as carers might know young carers that would benefit from the extra support that WP and outreach can do. And I'm pretty sure this isn't happening at Essex, but it's something would be curious to be exploring. And I just wonder if there's anyone out there who's already invented that wheel.
That's a great question, Benjamin. I'm certainly aware at Northumbria, I have a colleague called Michael Headley who is specifically for students. So I don't know if you're thinking of students or you're thinking just generally of younger people who are carers. But there certainly is a provision at Northumbria for young carers who are students.
There's space there for both, isn't there?
Absolutely.
There's an outreach element and then there's an in-reach element as well.
Yeah,
so like
definitely. It's a really great point.
So anybody out there, including Mark, you've just referred to there, if they wouldn't mind contacting, I'll put it in the email in the thing about outreach@essex.ac.uk. I'd just be curious to know what works, what doesn't, so we could see about what we could meaningfully do with what limited resource there might be available.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, the toolkit that we have developed is still a live document. So this is the kind of content that would be great to add to the toolkit. So what about young carers? How do we support young carers? So that's the kind of, again, that I mentioned earlier, we want it to be an editable document. So that's something that we would look to add to that document as well.
I imagine there's like a liminal space as well. There was sort of when does a young carer become a carer?
Yes, absolutely.
When they're engaging in university, whether as an employee or as a student. Yeah,
definitely. And I think Katherine mentioned that earlier. There's a phase, and I don't know if it was Claire or Fiona mentioning that, it's it's coming down the road. You're not there yet, but it's in the future. So that kind of preparation, one of the P's, the preparation point that Katherine mentioned as well.
Right. Thanks for your time. That's great.
So thank you, Benjamin. Claire's just putting a question. We're trying to post on our website and EDI Hubs, who are you looking after rather than are you a carer? Yeah, so it's again, that language as well is often quite an important point. It's sometimes can be a barrier, self-identifying as a carer rather than I'm looking after this person. So yeah, that maybe it is that language, that's the approach to try and raise awareness as well. And then making that pivot to say, well, actually, if you want to be able to access some of these resources and you're eligible for this in your institution, then that's the way you, so that's how you identify you are actually a carer. I did have, unless anyone has any further comments or questions at this stage, I have a small ask. So this is Kalichi. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Kalichi will be joining us today. We will reschedule Kalichi's session because it's well worth listening to Kalichi talk about what she has done at Newcastle. So she'll be talking about conducting that carer awareness raising activities that has happened at Newcastle, a bit more of the specifics of that. And not to steal her thunder, but I know she used that business case to make the case for the employer for carers resources at Newcastle, so that she can speak to that as well, which I think will be very useful. What I would like to ask now, we're talking about carers at work. I've done this in previous sessions. Please could you, and you don't have to do it in Menti, if you want to put it in the comments, you can do that. But what we want to know specifically is what we want from our employers. Sorry, that's my typo. What we want from our employers for carers. So thinking about some of those top priorities, it's been mentioned already that policy asks. I know the idea of paid leave might be one of the top ones. If you wouldn't mind providing a response to that question, we've got previous weeks where we've talked about campaign areas. We're trying to build a picture of what our members think are the most important asks, areas that we can organise around as UK PACT in particular. If you would like to contribute to that discussion as we're talking now as well, please feel free. That would be really helpful. I'll just leave that up there. Oh, just to say, yeah, there may be different ways of thinking about that. So there's like the ideal world, and perhaps the priority area or the first step would be this. So if you're happy to put that on there, it would really help Anna and I as we're building a picture of this for our general thinking about organising. Great, I can see we've got some comments added on there already. That's really helpful. So things like legal rights, paid leave, compassion. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's purely about just the humanizing of who is working in your organization. Caring sabbatical. Yeah, great. Guidance for time off. Yeah. Recognition and responsibility and need for flexibility. Yeah. Support and understanding, absolutely. Better conversations. So that might that connects quite nicely with what Katherine was saying earlier about it's kind of what was the term? I took notes so that I could actually use the correct terms. That peer side of things, but also the policies, making it transparent so that line managers can actually speak to that. I think that's where that passport was particularly useful at Newcastle, having the kind of reference document. Manager training, definitely. Signposting, ideas. But this is brilliant. Thank you so much for contributing these ideas. It really, really helps us. Genuine desire to help out, problem solve. Yeah. So I think this is absolutely brilliant. Understanding by senior leadership. Then we often find that it's when it's those at the top are practicing what we want to see or speaking to these issues. It really helps. Training for managers and human resources. Share. This is So helpful. Thank you so much, everyone, for contributing these ideas. I really, really appreciate it. So what we will do with that information, it will form part of our. We're building that picture of every time we meet. We're trying to consult with you, obviously verbally, but also capturing some of those key questions on our like mentees, and we've got a few of those already going. When we move into the new year, we'll be thinking as well about how is it that we organise as UK PACT, and we want your input with that as well. But for today, we're particularly focusing on carers. So thank you so much for contributing to that. We're drawing to the end of our time, and as I've said already, we're time poor, so we need to be efficient with our time. The next session that we have, I'm very excited to welcome Ernestine Gayo NZ, who is, I would categorize as a friend and colleague who I've spent some time attending Ernestine's conference in York St John about parental policies. But Ernestine's particularly passionate about breastfeeding provision. She does a lot of activism in that area. So she'll be speaking to that particular topic next time, how higher education institutions support that in the workplace, whether it be specific rooms. I know, like Claire Matisova on the call, she also did this freedom of information request. It's a very good way for us to build a picture of higher education as a sector and how it supports parents and carers. So I will be sending out an invite to that through the distribution list. Please cascade that to your network as well. Every member is welcome at these sessions. And I've taken a recording of this session, so you'll be able to share that afterwards for those who want to learn a bit more about carers. A quick question from Viv. Can someone, one moment, sorry, share the UK PACT website? I'm getting an environment org when I search on Google. Okay, I will share that in an email at the end, but it's hold on, it's www.ukpact.org. It should be that. Let me double check it takes you to the right place. Yes, that's the one. That's the one. So at the moment, as I said earlier, it's a landing page. It will be fully developed with distinct sections, but at present that's a landing page while the site is built. I think, just again to highlight, in January we have Jessica Hobbs, and she'll be speaking about paternal well-being. So that feeds into the narrative about .org, not .co.uk. That's the right, Viv. And so that will be feeding into that 6 weeks of paternity leave campaign area that we might be adding into as well. So those are a couple of dates for the diary, and I will send around the invite soon. And that's the end of our session, bang on time. So thank you so much for your time, as always. Really great to have you on the call. And yeah, just please keep coming along. We're building a movement, we're building an organization together. If you're interested in the benchmarking side of things, if you have technical ability with the benchmarking side, I see Claire is switched her camera on. So if you have any technical expertise to share this kind of information on the website, please get in touch. That will help us. But if you want to contribute to that, brilliant. And thank you so much for your questions, your comments. Really, you are the people that make this a vibrant webinar series. So I'm very pleased to welcome you and look forward to seeing you next time. I have recorded this, Fiona, so I will, and in fact, that's a good reminder to stop the recording now.